Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.life video interview. I'm joined today by Greg Smith. He is Cetinia's Global Director of Product Marketing, currently in Sydney, out from the US, and headed to Singapore next week to speak at the Super AI event on the topic, Are You AI Ready? And Greg is joining me to explain Cetinia's pragmatic AI maturity model for understanding a company's current readiness to deploy AI and what you'll need to do to advance up the ladder to succeed with more advanced AI use cases. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Really glad to be here today.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, AI, of course, is the flavor of, well, the decade so far. It's not going to be, damping down anytime soon, but only getting more impressive and exciting. And I've already had the chance to interview Cetinia's global analytics evangelist, Joe Thomas, on the topic of pragmatic AI and more. He was here earlier this year. And then last month, or maybe even earlier this month, it was Cetinia's Chief Product and Strategy Officer, Dan Brown, who sounds very literally connected, but it's a different Dan Brown. And people can watch those videos and interviews at my site, techadvice.life, if you're watching this on YouTube. But for those who need a refresher, Greg, can you please give us a quick recap of the Cetinia story in 2024?
Absolutely. So here at Certinia, we really are a platform for service-based businesses. So any organization that runs projects or skill-based businesses, we help them manage that process really from the beginning of an opportunity all the way to a renewal. So we're an operational tool that brings together things like estimating for services, staffing projects, managing projects, the financials of that work, and then also managing that ongoing customer relationship to make sure that customers are coming back happy and renewing or buying more services from your business. And our solutions are all built natively on top of the Salesforce platform.
Mm-hmm.
So they pair together with other solutions that businesses very frequently have within their ecosystem, everything from CRM, Sales Cloud to different community solutions or even ticketing tools with Service Cloud. So what we're able to do is then provide a holistic end-to-end solution for businesses that's really providing a single source of certainty, if you will.
So let's get right into it then. You've got the pragmatic AI maturity model. So what is this in brief? Because we're going to go into it in more detail after this, but also for those wondering, what is pragmatic AI? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, this was really driven out of what we're seeing right now, which is, you alluded to it earlier, a hype cycle.
Yeah.
This is the technology of the decade. It will probably continue to be so. And we really wanted to think about how do we ground ourselves in being able to leverage new technology in a way that really drives tangible business value. And so we've named this our pragmatic approach, and it really has three tenets. And we think that when you have these three things together, you really end up having a pragmatic, grounded, value-oriented approach to AI. It starts off with making sure that the technology is deployable. So I often refer to this as, this isn't a science experiment that you run.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to actually go and put into systems and use on a regular basis. It must be deployable across teams in the organization. And as you're thinking about AI technologies and use cases, the second tenet is they have to be actionable. So it's one thing to come up with, let's say, a prediction. It's great to come up with a prediction, but what are you going to do with that prediction that actually influences your business? And then finally, they need to be closed looped. And there's really two tenets to a closed loop approach. The first one is that the actions you're taking are right in the spot where those individuals who take the action can do so. And then also you're able to learn from those actions on an ongoing basis. And that's the beauty of some of these new technologies in AI, is that the more data and information you have, the better they get. And so you need to make sure that that loop is closed so that those models become even more accurate, even more actionable, and even more deployable.
Yeah. And as you were mentioning the hype cycle, I mean, I remember the Gartner hype cycle, and they've got the peak of inflated expectations and the trough of disappointment, and then the plateau of productivity. And I mean, we've had machine learning for decades now, and there's been previous hype cycles. Well, there's been previous instances of AI. I mean, Meta introduced something called Galactica a couple of weeks before ChatGPT in November 2022. And it was like Microsoft Tay and previous attempts where people were able to bamboozle it very quickly, and it was taken offline. Now, this didn't happen with ChatGPT and the current AI. And I think we've sort of, I mean, I think we've been at the peak of inflated expectations before and the trough of disappointment. And then I think we're already on the plateau of productivity, and it's like being compressed thanks to AI.
That's right.
Now, well, I don't know if did you want to mention anything about that?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I do think that when I think about AI, I really think about I'm going to call them two different flavors or approaches. There's AI that's predictive, and that's very much our traditional machine learning technologies. These have been around for decades. And then there's also the generative. And I think it's really the generative AI capabilities that democratized the concept of AI and really drove us up that peak. And now we're just starting to get to the point where we're kind of going in the other direction a little bit on the generative side of it. I think as a fun anecdote, I caught an article the other day about maybe you saw this one, the recommendation of geologists to eat one rock a day to stay healthy.
Well, that was Google's Gemini, which was taking information from across the internet and Reddit, and it wasn't able to reason with the sense that a human could, that maybe that's not such a good idea. I mean, they also said running with scissors was safe, that you should put non-toxic glue onto pizza to make sure the cheese sticks to the pizza. And it's just one of those things where, the intelligence of the AI seems to be incredible. It seems like it's conscious, but then you get examples like that where you wonder and realize that no, it's not. And by the way, whenever we drink mineral water, we're actually drinking microscopic little tiny rocks of minerals. So it's not as if that is like we don't actually do that. But the thing is, of course, nobody goes to the garden and eats rocks, which is what Google Gemini was suggesting. And of course, Google has now taken those things down. But just before we get on to the 5-stage taxonomy, I mean, Certinia is now obviously, like every company, using both flavors of AI, the machine learning and predictive over decades, and now the generative AI, and together they really give us this whole new understanding.
Yeah, and I think as we talk a little bit about this model, that'll come to life a little bit more because the key thing here is really what are you using to train those models? Where is that information coming from? Is that information coming from within the four walls of your business, your own intellectual property? Or is that information coming from public sources, the World Wide Web? And that has a big influence on how they show up within an organization. And I'll talk about that as we go through the model.
Well, you do have a 5-stage taxonomy for understanding a company's current readiness to deploy AI and what those companies will need to advance up the ladder to succeed with more advanced AI use cases. So let's go through each stage one by one. So what's the first stage and what is it called?
So the first stage is as simple as initiated. It is the initial stage. We are just getting started with AI, and this is where most organizations probably are today. We'll be honest. And that's okay. That's okay. And what's really indicative of organizations that are at this stage is that the data that they're using to work with these models is fragmented across the organization. So this might be an exercise where we're pulling, data out of multiple different systems and trying to merge it together. Spreadsheets of information are getting fed into some type of tool that's getting leveraged to reason over it. And it's really a scenario where we're really looking for the different use cases in an organization where AI might help. Someone has a good idea. I think this would be helpful here. And we go and we try and, test it out a little bit. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of inaccuracy in the models. And it's not deployable, not super actionable, definitely not closed looped. If we get back to the framework a little bit, But that's where a lot of organizations are starting today. And I think one of the things that's really valuable about having a taxonomy here is that if that's where your organization is, you can then line that up with some of the different use cases that you can use effectively today. So with generative AI that's trained on information that's outside of your business, think about an assistant to help you write emails faster or something like that. You can start using that now. That's available to many folks. I mean, it's baked right into Gmail and other solutions, and that helps drive efficiency within an organization. And so that initial stage is really about finding some low-hanging fruit for efficiencies without having a really well-structured setup just yet.
So, what is stage two?
So stage two is all about repeatability. So this is where we're starting to move things forward. And this is a scenario where the data within your organization is still distributed. It's likely held within many different solutions. Maybe those solutions are focused on a very specific area of your organization. They might even have AI capabilities baked into them that you can start using on a repeatable basis. And the key thing here is that you now are able to start accessing structured information that is intellectual property to your business, unique to your business, to start finding different ways to leverage AI to, again, be more efficient and do that in a way that is repeatable for the organization. If we think about going back to predictive AI and generative AI,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not doing a lot of predictive work here. The information is just not robust enough to be able to do that. But you're definitely able to find scenarios where copilots and genies and Geminis and all the different wonderful names we're coming up with here are able to really make life better for folks within their little slice of the world.
So now we're at the halfway mark, stage three. Tell us all about it.
Controlled. Stage three is all about being controlled. And if organizations can get to this state, they're probably going to be pretty happy. This is really where we start bringing in a centralized data structure. We can start making predictions about what will happen in the business and be able to start actioning off of those predictions to have better decision intelligence and drive outcomes. So I'll give you an example with some of our customers, things that we're seeing. This is generally applicable, but some of the things we're doing is helping organizations use AI to predict the margin of their projects when they're done being completed. And we're getting large enough data sets here that are all together to be able to make some of those predictions and then take it a step further, some suggestions around what could be done to enhance said margin. And that's why at this controlled state, you're really starting to get into areas where we're driving tangible business value. It's not just efficiency, it's more than that. It's decision-making skills that get better and stronger.
And look, we've got two more stages to go, but would it be fair to say that a lot of companies are trying to get to stage three, maybe not without realizing it, because that's when you're really starting to, as you were explaining, get some of those tangible benefits. And I mean, a lot of companies wouldn't have even have started yet.
Exactly, exactly. Like I said, if an organization can get to stage three, they're going to be pretty happy. They're going to be achieving their goals that they've set out, and many of them have struck goals for this year and beyond to really start leveraging AI. They'll be able to achieve those goals because they're starting to drive that value. But I think the key thing here is that this stage you really need to start having centralized data. So the many ways to do this, it could be data lakes, it could be BI tools, whatever it might be within your organization to start bringing information from multiple departments together. That'll be essential to start doing this.
And of course, once you've reached a certain level, there's always the next stage of the game, whether it's in
That's
business,
right.
life, or love. So, what's stage four?
Yeah. So when we get into stage four, we're talking about being optimized. And when we think about this, we're really focusing on merging together the data that you're using to make these models accurate and work with the actual transactional systems your people use on an every single day basis. And why that's important is that that allows you to have one very clean and well-structured information. You're not migrating it between systems with integrations and doing translations and et cetera. But you're also able to have that structured in a way that's real time. So as the day progresses and more information's added to your transactional systems, those data sets are expanding and continuing to get even smarter and richer and allowing the different AI technologies to get more accurate in terms of predictions they're making.
Now, the sci-fi fan in me wants to say stage five is like AI consciousness, but that's probably
No,
like stage 10 or something. So,
yeah,
so
we're
what?
nowhere near it.
Yeah, I know, but like I said, it's just my sci-fi brain. So, what is stage five? The last
Yeah,
stage
so
thus far.
so the last stage is all about continuous improvement, and that's where if we're in an organization where we have a centralized both transactional and reporting platform with all the information together, when we get to this point, we're really starting to think about some of the more complex cultural aspects of being able to adopt AI within an organization. Things like data governance, everybody's favorite topic, and feedback loops within these models that continue to expand their efficacy across the organization. So stage five is, an area that many businesses simply won't get to that. I'll be honest, they won't. But being able to aspire to move towards that, there will probably be pockets of an organization that's operating at that level. So that's why it's important to understand what great looks like at that fifth stage for today. Because, like you said, reaching singularity might happen at some point in the future, but
I
that's
compress
probably
the hype cycle right down to
yes, yeah,
nothingness. Well,
exactly.
yeah. Well, I mean, the ability to think about it and create it. I mean, mind computer interfaces where we'll be directly communicating with AI. All those things will come. And of course, we are already apparently training GPT-5, and Anthropic will, no doubt be training whatever is the next version of Claude Opus, their most advanced version. And so in the future, people will able to, or companies will be able to compress some of these things and get to stage five earlier or completely. But for the time being, of course, we're here in the first half of 2024, nearly at the second half, but not quite. And I mean, these five stages, you wouldn't have been talking about them 3 or 4 years ago because the AI revolution as we have it didn't exist. It would have been more about predictive AI.
Exactly. It would have been all about predictive AI. And now that we have generative capabilities as well in the toolkit that we're starting to work with and explore again, find those use cases where it makes sense. It won't make sense everywhere, but where it makes sense, people are able to really see and visualize what the power of that looks like. Whereas in the predictive models, again, drives a lot of good tangible business value, but it's a little bit harder to see and interact with the same way as the generative models are.
So, Greg, in your everyday travels and work globally, what are the biggest questions that businesses ask you and Satinia about implementing AI?
Yeah, so I think there's two that come to mind for me. The first one is quite simply, what's everyone else doing? Everybody
Yeah,
wants to know what everyone else is
of course.
doing.
Yeah.
Um, Great question to ask. And so we're always, as we talk to people, trying to catalog, oh, that's an interesting idea. That's a good use case to be a consolidator of what everyone else is doing to help our customers, along that journey as well. So I think that's one of them because that goes back to finding the use cases where this technology is applicable. And then the second one is really, where's my data going? And I think that's a big one.
Mm.
We see this show up in multiple different ways. It's all about trust, right? And there's really two sides of it. One side of it is who has access to my data. That's very important to
Mm.
understand. And then the other side of it is, will my data be leaked out of my organization to be able to take advantage of these technologies? And it's important for folks to really learn about that and really be scrutinizing that as they're evaluating new technologies because the outcome of the technology is going to be very fancy and whiz bang, but the fine print is a little bit important right now as we're figuring out how to approach this. So that's the other one is talk to me about where my data is going.
And this replicates what's happening in the consumer world, in that the next version of Windows, coming with these new Copilot Plus Pro PCs, will have a feature called Windows Recall that will take snapshots, screenshots every, I guess, a few times a second of whatever it is you're doing, so that you can use semantic search to look for the web page with the brown bag that was some fancy brand you wanted to buy for your partner, or the, as the demo showed, or the blue dress, or the PowerPoint slides with the purple writing pointing to a graph and a chart. And of course, people are already worried that, well, is that information going to be hacked? Is Microsoft going to train it on their AI models? Are they going to use it for targeted advertising? And of course, they've said, no, we're not going to. It's going to stay on your computer. We're not going to use it for training AI. But of course, people in business have the same worry. So it's something that everyone talks about. Our ethics are very strong. We want to make sure all this is correct. But it all comes back to what Ronald Reagan said about the Russians and their dismantling of the nuclear program, which was trust, but verify.
Verify. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So is all of this what you'll be talking about at the Super AI conference in Singapore?
Yeah, absolutely. With one addition, actually. So we'll be running folks through this model and helping them understand where their organization is today. I'm really excited to have those conversations. But we're also going to be showing folks some different capabilities at different stages in this model to really help them ground themselves in what might be possible for their organization. So we're really excited about that and looking forward to the show.
And how has your trip to Australia been thus far? I mean, I guess you've been seeing customers, and you're back next week after the conference as well, right?
That's right. Everyone has been so welcoming. I love it here. It's always a joy to visit Australia and, meet with my colleagues down here as well as all of our customers. So I'm doing some rounds this week and then got some more scheduled for next week. Make sure that I get in and say hi to everyone.
Now, before I ask you some closing questions, my usual closing questions about memories of your first computer, is there anything else in this conversation that we need to know about Satinia and AI?
Yeah, I think one thing that is really important to us, and I obviously alluded to this earlier with the trust comment, but our solutions are built natively within Salesforce, and so the way we're thinking about taking and leveraging AI across our platform is really by leveraging the technologies that Salesforce is building into their platform, and I think that's powerful for organizations because that's creating that trust boundary for them. And it's solving those trust questions at an organizational level versus at a departmental level. And that allows folks to be able to explore in their own space without having to worry as much about the trust requirements and the nitty-gritty details that the CIOs are really focused on right now. So I think that's just one other aspect that we think is really powerful with respect to how we're approaching it.
Yeah, well, Salesforce is a huge platform. You used to be known as Financial Force, for those who are wondering. And I mean, you benefit from those incredible synergies.
Absolutely, every day. And I'm always amazed at, the power and potential of the platform and the creativity that all of our customers are able to bring into how they leverage both our solutions and Salesforce's solutions.
So I always like to ask the people I'm speaking with, can you please share a memory of your first computer?
So I love this question. This is great. It took me back a little bit, and it was the late 1900s. I believe the year was 1993 to be exact. And I remember the box showing up, and it was huge, massive, and it was painted like a cow. Now, I don't know if these crazy cow boxes actually made their way to folks here in Australia, but
Gateway. They did.
Gateway, you nailed it.
They
exactly.
did. Yeah, as soon as you said cow, I knew straight away.
Exactly what it was. So the first computer was a Gateway, and I remember the day that showed up like it was yesterday. It was a big family event.
Yeah. I remember my dad coming home. This was in 1979 when I was 4.5 years old. And they didn't have the towers back then. This was like a computer inside of a keyboard. And it was an American computer called the Exidy Sorcerer. I mean, the people who did that went off to make pinball machines. Quite sadly, they didn't keep going. They were one of the pioneers. But at the time, you had the Apple I, which you had to build yourself, and the Commodore PET, which was that sort of triangular, almost triangular computer from Buck Rogers in the 25th century. So yeah, we've come a long way since then. And I mean, all those AI, sci-fi things we saw about and read about and saw on TV, we're living it now. It's so cool.
I know.
So my second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned very early on, I got this advice, was that time is our most valuable resource that we have, and whenever someone gives you their time, you need to be appreciative of it because it's the most valuable thing they have, and you also need to be very thoughtful about who and what you give your time to, and it was interesting because when I thought about that, it's really a great equalizer, right? There's nobody that has minutes that are longer than my minutes. My minutes and yours are exactly the same. And so the more I thought about that, it really helped me understand that we have to be deliberate with what we do and make sure we're spending our time the best way possible.
Well, that is great advice. And yes, you can be the richest person in the world and not and have, as you say, run out at the same time. I mean, there was a video on Twitter over the past couple of weeks showing this head transplant system with this AI robot that could do all these things, and you'd be stuck in some sort of bed for months whilst your new head and new face, connected properly to your new body. But that's all still sci-fi. It makes for a great video until that
Not
happens.
there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. So, Greg, what is your final message to the viewers and readers?
Oh, well, I think it's similar to what you said earlier, but a little bit different. Be curious, but be cautious. I think that's how we should all be approaching AI today, because curiosity is such a powerful gift.
Yeah, well, I'm sure from memory it was Albert Einstein who talked about imagination being one of the great things to have, and of course, imagination and curiosity are very much intertwined. So,
Absolutely.
Greg Smith, Satinia's Global Director of Product Marketing, thank you so much for taking the time. I wish you the best of success in Singapore at the conference and when you return next week, and I hope to be speaking with you again soon.
Excellent. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.